And you're very welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here at the National Ploughing Championships. I'm joined now on stage by Green Party Senator and of course Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine with responsibility for land use and biodiversity, Pippa Hackett. Minister Hackett, you're very welcome to the Agriland tent. It's good to be back ploughing again.
It certainly is, thank you Aisling, and it's wonderful to be here. I was here yesterday afternoon and all day today and tomorrow, and look, it's just great. I mean, the crowds out there today are something else. I don't think I've ever seen a ploughing so busy. And I think it just is indicative of what it means to farmers, to rural people, and it really epitomises everything that's wonderful about farming and rural life in Ireland. So it's wonderful to be back.
Absolutely. Minister, we might talk first about the organic farming scheme. You made an announcement this week about new entrants into the scheme, that we've got over 300 more farmers have entered the scheme. We have this scheme reopening again for applications in October. Obviously, the government have a big target here when it comes to increasing the land that is farmed organically, €256 million. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and again, it's reflective of our ambition for the sector. We're starting off from a really low base in Ireland. I mean, most people watching here may well know, but Ireland is one of the lowest organic producers in terms of land area. We're at about 2% of our farmland. The average across Europe is about 9% now, and European ambition across Europe is to reach 25% of organic land by 2030. I mean, that's fairly ambitious as well. Our own ambitions here are to get it from that 2% to 7.5% by the end of the next CAP round, and that's what that €256 million has been secured for the next round of the CAP supports. That's a fivefold increase in funding for organics.
Is there a market for organic produce? That's a concern, that we're going to bring all of these farmers into the OFS scheme, and is there going to be a market for what they're producing? Are they going to get paid for this?
There will be a market. There is a market. I was, a couple of months ago, led Ireland's first ever trade mission to Germany, organic trade mission to Germany, and certainly what the feeling there was that we need more organic produce, certainly need more organic beef, organic dairy produce, particularly in something like cheddar cheese came up a number of times. And I think because we've coming from such a low base, we've never produced enough to hit those bigger markets. So, we're only killing maybe 100, 150 cattle a week. Pitch that against the national kill in terms of beef. It's tiny.
Is there a domestic market for this produce, do you think? Is there an appetite amongst the Irish public? Because often organic produce, it's more expensive. We've a cost of living crisis at the moment, and will people buy into that?
There is, and I think particularly for fresh meats and certainly dairy, I mean, they're very attractive to Irish consumers. And I think anyone who scans around even supermarkets over the last maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, you will see more organic produce there for sale. And again, that's reflective of consumer trends. And look, organic can be more expensive. Sometimes it's not that much more expensive, particularly something like organic beef if you're producing it off a very much grass-based system. There's no really need for it to be more expensive. Admittedly, organic pork, organic poultry, yes, because they have a larger feed input requirement. That does make it more expensive.
For farmers who do become organic, the conversion, the process, the paperwork, is there anything we can do to streamline that process to make it more attractive to farmers? I know obviously the land has to take time to convert, but a lot of farmers say when they're in the organic scheme that we have to account for a lot of what we're doing, whereas maybe conventional farmers don't.
And it's actually an interesting narrative, that, because they have to, as you say, account for the fact that they don't use certain products or put certain things on their land, but that's part and parcel of it. I wouldn't say it's overly onerous. I mean, if any farmer considering converting, to get in touch with an organic certification body, they'll talk them through the process. And then after that,
can do to streamline that at the moment, you don't think?
There might be some streamlining which could do in terms of access to data. So even if you're a regular farmer, you're in a Board B, a quality assurance scheme. You get your check every 18 months, and then you might have your organic.
I
think so. I think I would like to see if there is any potential to streamline the two for sure, because I think anything that makes it easier for farmers to farm, as sustainably as possible, has to be good.
I suppose in terms of, you were mentioning the different types of organic produce, but getting somebody who's a dairy farmer into the organic farming scheme, or organic milk, the base price for conventional milk, for regular milk that isn't organic, is equal or even above organic milk price.
Absolutely, and I accept that. And I think if people are going into organics for only the premium, it's probably not the way to go. Look, certainly dairy, conventional dairy is a very strong position at the moment. I know input costs are rising, but they've certainly been, I think, supported from the marketplace in a way that the prices are very strong for conventional milk, and that's fine. We're not trying to force this really on anyone. It's an option. It might suit some farmers who are maybe at the less stocked maybe as dairy farmers, who maybe making that decision, like, do I go bigger or do I change what I do? There might be options there, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's an option for farmers, and I'd invite them all to certainly look at it.
That's the interpretation of organics, that it's for smallholders, for smaller farmers. What are we doing to attract bigger farmers into the organic scheme?
That's probably a wrong interpretation, actually, because I think the average land that we brought in under the last couple of times the scheme has been open, I think it's somewhere between 45 and 50 hectares, so those aren't small farms. And we did extend.
But we're changing the profile, so.
Well, we are, but I mean, it's open for big farmers or small farmers. I mean, we pay the full amounts up to 70 hectares, and that's very useful for bigger farmers. And we also made a change this year because many farmers felt that they were, for example, hill farmers or those on very marginal land who couldn't meet the stocking rate. We reduced that back down to the same stocking rate level for A and C. So we have opened the door to more extensive farmers, perhaps along the western seaboard, and that'd be a good thing. If those farmers are farming organically, certainly there are co-benefits for environment and water quality and so forth.
I want to move to forestry in just a minute, Minister, but I just want to ask you very briefly on organics. In terms of farmers considering going into the acres scheme, if I'm an organic farmer, how is that going to impact my payment?
It shouldn't. I mean, you're actually prioritising
some payments in acres then.
There will be some overlap. So if something like a low-in permanent pasture type payment under acres, you're already doing that if you're organic. So the European Union rules, there won't be any doubling up payments, but there's plenty of opportunity there. In fact, organic farmers will be prioritised for access to acres, and if it's a large farm, then you might get around a lot of it. But there's a lot of measures there in acres that will suit organic farmers, and I think there's great potential there to take from both schemes.
Yeah, you're obviously you've a responsibility for land use as well. The sectoral targets have been obviously decided, but land use and of course land use and change in forestry, we don't have a target for that sector. When is that coming? I mean, I know that's still very far out. Can we stand over sectoral targets when we don't have that?
Well, we'll have to, and it's a hugely important part of the overall picture in terms of meeting our emissions targets. What we're currently doing between my department and the Department of Energy and Climate Action is a coordinated work to deliver on a land use review, and that was one of the programme for government commitments, to come up with a land use. So what we've done is the first phase of that, and we've utilised all sorts of our agencies, with my department, the EPA, and a wide variety have actually at this moment analysed what we do with our land, what we use our land for. The next phase of that is to sort of decide what might be best for certain parts of the land and how best we should use this land. And it's not just for climate action, really. In my mind, it's very much about communities and what will work best, and what could be things around flooding defences.
Could there be wins for farmers when we finally get a sectoral target there?
I think so, because then we might be able to. Nobody's going to be forcing anyone to do anything, but if we know the best use of certain parts of our land area.
What's the time frame for this?
Well, we hope to have this second phase completed in about 18 months. Now, it's been a long process. It's slow. It is slow, and that is a bit frustrating, but I think it's important we get it right in the end, and look, we do need to consult widely and make sure people understand what we're doing it and what we're doing it for.
Yeah, Minister, we're going to move to forestry, because obviously we have a target to plant 18,000 hectares of forestry. Forestation rates aren't at that. And a lot of people who are involved in forestry would say that falls at your door. And why have we not increased planting rates?
Absolutely. A target at the moment is 8,000, not 18, but we do need to be moving almost towards something like that. You're not wrong in saying that. I suppose it's important to say at the top is that we have had a difficult last number of years with forestry, and really this has really started from the 2018-2019 time, when European court directives and Irish court judgments found Ireland in breach of EU directives, EU environmental law, and ultimately that is king. We have to operate within those, and that changed the way my department had to issue licences. It changed the processes we need to do. It changed the depth of information we needed to issue a license.
It's led to huge delays in licences, and it's damaged confidence in planting as well.
It has, but certainly when I took office there was an absolute crisis in terms of delivery of timber to the sawmill sector. There was a backlog, a huge backlog in terms of appeals. So licences were issued and then appeals were taken against those licences. Now I introduced legislation within the first couple of months of getting into government. That has essentially dealt with the backlog in the appeals. So we had a situation where we had 1,000 in the appeals backlog, and now look, that comes through. We've got 30 now. People can still make appeals, as is the right, but our processes now of dealing with the appeals are much more effective.
So you happy where your department is at the moment dealing with the backlog?
I'm happy that we've made very big strides and significant improvements in terms of the backlog in the licensing as a whole. I think if you compare last August with this August, we've probably halved that number in the pool, if you like. Our issue, as you indicated at the start, is certainly around afforestation, and that is a huge challenge, and absolutely we have to do everything we can to improve that. We have a new forest strategy and a new forest programme to be rolled out from next year, and I think
talking
that's
to people here ahead of talking to you, Minister, one person told me that it's aspirational and that maybe the focus is on woodlands rather than commercial forestry, and this person made the point that we need commercial forestry. Farmers look at forestry very often as a pension pot, and often Sitka spruce, it's demonised perhaps sometimes by the Green Party maybe, or maybe environmental lobbies.
We do acknowledge we do need timber, and we absolutely need to be, when you look at this situation with housing or construction, we absolutely need to be putting as much timber into that, and yes, that is the commercial side of it, and we're fully supportive of it.
But is there a hesitancy in the Green Party about felling that timber then?
No. I think as long as it's not damaging the environment, that's really where we're coming from, and it's only upholding what's there. However, there are ways of doing that properly. There are other mechanisms of looking at how we fell, how we manage forestry, and in fact the sector themselves would be frustrated with the licensing process, and there's very little really scope for manoeuvre, unfortunately. But we did have an independent review of the regulatory process, of the legal requirements. We have come up with one or two recommendations there that we will pursue, and hopefully will lessen the impact of that. But getting back to the trees, yes, we do need a commercial forestry sector, but we don't need it what it's been like for necessarily the last 20-30 years, because we see communities like in parts of Leitrim, maybe Cavan, Kerry, who have been essentially obliterated by commercial forestry. The people have felt very, that their communities have been, damaged by this. So there's a balance here, and that's what we always have to strike a balance. So,
Minister, I'm conscious of the time, and I wanted to mention one or two other points to you. The RUS scheme for ash dieback as well. Where are we with that? There's obviously a change to planning for farmers who want to replant conifers. Where are we at that?
Well, the planning piece is for this quarter, as far as I understand it. That will be sorted out. Look, ash dieback is something that comes up all the time with me. We can talk about forestry and we can talk about Sitka spruce, but ultimately almost the bottom line with almost everyone I speak to about forestry is ash dieback, and I'm incredibly conscious of that. Now, when this government was formed, I knew that the RUS scheme was brand new around then in the mid-2020s. Look, hundreds of farmers have availed of it. Not everyone, and there is still certainly in terms of confidence
delays in processing applications as
well. A little bit of that, but it's more that it's not satisfied. Got to really the concerns people have with it, especially those who have planted a lot of ash. So it's something I'm really keeping close to my mind, and it's something I do want to deal with.
So are we looking at a review of RUS, or are you looking at it again?
I just think we do need to talk more about ash dieback, and it's something I'm going to consider over the next couple of months.
Okay, Minister, very finally, as I said, you're a Green Party senator. The Green Party might be the most popular party on the Ploughing site.
Come to our stand, it's great. No, listen, look, we
I mean, how do you find it as a Green Party representative?
Since 2015,
but
since I became
your interaction, I suppose, very briefly with the farming lobby and the criticism that you receive, both personally and the party's receiving from the farming sector.
Yeah, look, I think we sort of both know where we stand, but I mean, you need to iron out those bumps. You need to keep conversations going, and understanding from both sides is important. So there's no point people saying, "Oh, the Green Party are irrelevant." We're not. We're in government. And we're very relevant, but there's no point, supporters or very hardline environmentalists saying we can't do it this way. Yeah, we have to
very
fill
briefly,
that middle
are
ground.
Some of the grassroots in the Green Party upset with a 25% reduction as opposed to maybe something higher for the agriculture sector?
I think some would have liked it higher, but I think, given my understanding and certainly my involvement in those negotiations, I think everyone in one sense was relieved that we had a figure. There's still more to do, certainly around the land use sector. You alluded to that earlier, yes. But let's focus forward. Let's not worry about how we've got here. Let's not talk about what's gone wrong in the past. Let's focus on the future, eyes forward, and solutions-focused approach.
Okay. Minister for State at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Pippa Hackett, thank you so much for joining us. And as the Minister alluded to, pop along to the Green Party stand if you are coming along to the National Ploughing Championship. Well, free apple, there you go. You can't do better than that. We're going to go back out onto the field now and catch up with some of the exhibitors.